So is it possible to combine a handful of natural herbal substances together into one formula or one recipe or one elixir that can then really boost the levels of our natural and endogenous pleasure and bliss and love chemicals? The answer is yes, and that's exactly what I'm going to explain and share with you in this video. We're going to take a few handful of simple herbs and supplements, put them together in a way which works synergistically and formulaically to boost, potentiate, and synergize together to then create higher levels naturally of our brain's endogenous or inherent bliss, pleasure, and love chemicals. And by those words, I don't mean some sort of metaphysical or like metaphorical way. I mean the actual literal biochemical, scientific chemicals which generate these feelings. So the foundation and the four ingredients which will really make up this formula are raw cacao or raw chocolate, Shou Wu extract, Mucuna extract, and an extract of blue-green algae, which is called Blue Mana or Blue Magic or Brain On, depending on the brand. Specifically in this video, we're going to be talking about Brain On. So basically, we're going to go through each of these ingredients and understand why they're in there and how they all work together synergistically. So first, number one, raw chocolate. This is a substance which is obviously associated with love and pleasure and bliss and all of these things, but science has actually validated that these associations and these sort of cultural colloquialisms are actually true and have a real basis, because chocolate in its raw state is a rich source of anandamide, which basically that means Ananda, which means bliss, and mide, which means chemical. So literally, scientists name this chemical the bliss chemical. And anandamide is basically our brain's own form of THC because it works on the cannabinoid receptors in our brain. And you've maybe seen study or seen things that say, oh, you know, marijuana is cool because we have receptor sites for THC. Well, actually, receptor sites aren't necessarily for the THC in external sources, but for the chemical that our brain naturally produces called anandamide. And this is called, or this is secreted, you know, after we've had a workout, or it's kind of correlated with what we feel as like kind of a runner's high. So chocolate has that anandamide. Number two, it has a chemical called phenylethylamine, which is called the love molecule. And this is because our brains produce higher amounts of it when we're really in love. It secretes higher amounts of it when we're sexually aroused, and then the levels peak around the moment of orgasm. So for those reasons, it's dubbed kind of the love molecule. But also our brain really produces it when we're hyper-focused and concentrated, or sort of engulfed in a book or a movie or a song, and we sort of lose all sense of time and all sense of the outside environment. And this is also another endogenous thing that our brain produces naturally. So chocolate has anandamide, it has PEA, but it also has, thirdly, neurotransmitter modulating agents which then potentiate the effects of anandamide and PEA, and also keep our brain from inhibiting it and recycling it and basically eating it up. So what that means is it helps us naturally have more of these chemicals, but then it naturally helps our brain to keep those chemicals circulating for longer. So you can see kind of why a lot of people call chocolate, you know, nature's answer to Prozac. Fourth, and supportive to that, chocolate has a really rich source of antioxidants and magnesium, which magnesium is sort of a relaxant and helps to, you know, relax the body, relax the mind, and sort of help out with heart and blood circulation. And then the antioxidants help protect all of those unique and rare trace elements which we were just talking about. So that's why chocolate is in there. Number two, Shou Wu. And a lot of people, you know, Shou Wu as kind of the anti-aging longevity herb, but what they don't know is it's the richest and most effective source in the plant world of MAO-B, which that means monoamine oxidase B. And basically what that chemical is a chemical in our brain that more or less eats up and recycles dopamine. And our ability to produce this and inhibit this from happening diminishes as we age, or diminishes if we've been through periods of stress or depression or anxiety. So basically what Shou Wu does is it inhibits this enzyme, MAO-B, and thus allows us to naturally have more dopamine and more of the pleasure chemicals circulating in our brain. So that's why that would be in there. Number three, Mucuna. Mucuna is the richest and actually one of the only sources in the plant world of L-Dopa. And if you're not familiar with that and don't know what that is, it's basically an amino acid which the body and the brain uses and converts into dopamine. So it's kind of like if you take dopamine in sort of a supplement form, or you eat it in a food, it just gets sort of eaten up and destroyed in the digestive process because it can't really cross the blood-brain barrier. Whereas L-Dopa can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and thus naturally boost levels of dopamine. On top of that, Mucuna has abilities to modulate the endocrine system. It also contains serotonin, it also contains dopamine, it contains 5-HTP, which is the precursor to serotonin. It contains 3 different kinds of dimethyltryptamine, as well as a whole host of other really rare and unique chemicals. It also contains these neurotransmitter modulating agents, which we were talking about, which then not only help our body to naturally produce more of these chemicals, but help us to naturally have more of it circulating and to keep our body from breaking it up and eating it up as fast. So that's why Mucuna is in there. Number 4, the blue-green algae extract, or the brain on, that's in there because aside from cacao, raw chocolate, blue-green algae is one of the other plant and food sources of PEA, or phenylethylamine. So basically, brain on is an extract of the blue-green algae that has higher concentrations of the PEA. So for that reason, it's called brain on, obviously, because you take it in and you have just a sense of greater concentration, focus, you feel better, your mood's better, you feel more inspired and motivated and creative, etc. So also on top of PEA, the blue-green algae contains really potent antioxidants which protect those unique chemicals, and it contains chemicals which act to inhibit our body breaking those chemicals down and eating them up as fast. Because the thing with serotonin and dopamine and PEA and Anandamide is that they have a very short shelf life or half-life in our brain, meaning we get a rush of it and then our brain sort of recycles it and moves on. And this is sort of part of the explanation why people get caught up in drugs or get caught up in addictive behavior, is because they know and understand that these highs or these levels of chemicals in the brain don't last forever. So that's what makes this formula and lineup of 4 things here superior and advantageous, because it helps our body naturally have more of these things in a more sustainable and realistic way. Meaning it doesn't function like a drug where it'll overstimulate us and then we'll bottom out and crash or get depleted or burnt out, but it works in a sort of a nutritional way to give our body the building blocks to do what it's already trying to do, but just in a much more efficient and effective way. And then because it's coming from plants, because it's coming from complex food sources, it contains things within it that can keep these levels in balance, meaning it won't throw us out or overstimulate us, because it contains cofactors and coenzymes and all these other various complex chemicals which we've talked about, which help keep things sure in an elevated range, in an optimized range, but within a normal metabolic range that our body can handle. So how all of this fits together and how all these ingredients tie together and synergize is that, number 1, the cacao contains the pleasure and the bliss molecules, as well as the inhibitors. Number 2, Shou Wu contains more inhibitors which inhibit those bliss molecules from being broken down. Number 3, Mucuna contains the basically fundamental building blocks of the neurotransmitters as well as inhibiting agents. And then number 4, the blue-green algae also contains these pleasure chemicals and these pleasure molecules and antioxidants and protective chemicals, as well as the chemicals which can help these other neurotransmitters stay in our brain and stay in circulation much longer and much more efficiently and effectively. So hopefully now you can see how all of these things fit together and sort of support and play off of each other, and can really create a natural high or a natural sense of upliftment within a normal range that our body can handle, but also in a way that lasts a long time. So for me, the recipe is something I've been tweaking and playing with for quite a while, and basically what I can tell you is that the effects last quite a while, and they come on pretty quickly, and then they can just last and sort of ride it out all day. And you wake up the next day after sleeping really well and basically feel great and feel refreshed and feel sort of inspired and kick-started for the next day. So what I'm saying, what I mean by that is it's not this sort of like up and down roller coaster sort of thing where, oh, you feel great for a couple hours and you crash, or you feel great for the day and then you crash and you wake up the next day with a headache or hangover. It's nothing like that, because again, it's working naturally with what our body and our brain's already trying to do, and it's using chemicals which help to naturally modulate and keep these levels uplifted and optimized, but also within normal metabolic ranges that won't overstimulate or imbalance the body.